There's something for every imagination at your local comic shop. Visit ComicShopLocator.com to find a store near you.
Hey, I'm Garrett Gunn. You might know me from Good Boy, Warhorns, Franklin and Gus, and you're watching The Experience.
Hey, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Dan Wickline Show. Today, we are going to talk about Hawkeye Episode 5. But I know a lot of the world is not only thinking about that, they're thinking about Spider-Man No Way Home and some other big news that dropped. But there's, we're going to focus on all of that today. But we're going to start with probably one of the big news stories for me and for some other people. And it'll come around, you'll see in just a moment. But Sony, who is already happy today because the Spider-Man movie opened overseas for close to $44 million in the first day, like in what countries that it's opened already on Wednesday. There'll be more openings at midnight tonight or the early preview stuff. And then the weekend, this movie is going to be huge. But that's not all the Sony news out there. Sony made an interesting purchase. They have bought the entire musical catalog from Bruce Springsteen, the boss himself, the guy from New Jersey, Born to Run. The guy is fantastic. I was just listening to his version of Santa Claus is Coming to Town the other night when I was driving around with Lisa and the kids talking about or looking for Christmas lights. And I was saying that it's one of my favorite Christmas songs. And Lisa was telling me that she didn't think Bruce Springsteen could sing. So, yeah, I have to rethink this whole thing. But anyway, so Bruce Springsteen has sold his entire catalog to Sony. Now, I know what you're thinking. How does that tie into comics? Because I was just thinking, Sony sure does like to make movies like Spider-Man No Way Home, Venom Let There Be Carnage. Well, now they could do stuff like they bring out a Black Cat movie. It could be Black Cat, 10th Avenue Freeze Out, Morbius, Streets of Fire, Kraven, No Surrender. How about the next Venom movie being Darkness on the Edge of Town? Finally get around to a Silk movie, calling it Because the Night. Or my favorite, the next Spider-Man movie, Spider-Man Born to Run. They can bring all those Springsteen songs in, make them part of the movie. They could do that. They own the catalog now. Yeah. By the way, if you guys don't know this, Mark Guggenheim, one of the creators of the Arrowverse and writers on Arrow, was a huge Springsteen fan. And the penultimate episode of each season of Arrow was the title of a Springsteen song. So Springsteen and comics, there is a connection there. Now, going from the boss to bosses, or the boss, is a new trailer that Marvel has dropped for Hawkeye. And we've got it right here, looking for the season finale. So let's run that.
Kate, it's time. I just want to know you're ready.
I'm ready.
This Wednesday, the Marvel Universe is about to get a lot bigger.
There's someone at the top. He's the guy I've been worried about this whole time.
No way.
Marvel Studios' Hawkeye season finale streaming this Wednesday only on Disney+.
All right, how cool did that look? I love the look of Clint in the dress shirt, but you know that new uniform is underneath it. So at some point, there's going to be a big reveal. You know, someone's probably going to pull his shirt off of him, and you'll see the comic accurate costume underneath. Yeah, it just looks like that's going to be a lot of fun. We get the scene of Kingpin walking. Again, they don't show us the face. We got that little fuzzy photo in the last episode. Before we go any further, JD, do the spoiler roll for me, please. All right. If you're here now, then you know we are talking spoilers about the latest episode of Hawkeye. So it opened up in a kind of a weird place. Instead of it start, we've had each episode kind of start. We had Kate's past in episode 1. We had Maya's past in episode 3. So we start off episode 5 with a past moment from Yelena, who we just saw in the previous episode. So I really like how they're doing that pattern. But this was one of the most interesting little clips that I've seen in a while, because we got a little of it in WandaVision when we saw Monica Rambeau return from the blip, and just the utter insanity of everything going on in a hospital where all these people that had disappeared suddenly returned. But what we saw was basically an empty room and her suddenly reforming. What we got this time is from Yelena's point of view as the entire, basically she walks in. We start off with she's following up on the Black Widow movie. And if you didn't think the Black Widow movie was going to be important to this series, you haven't been paying attention, because this is all about Natasha. This is Clint's goodbye to Natasha in a lot of ways. He's still trying to deal with that grief. And most of the Marvel series have been about grief. Wanda's grief over the Vision. Then Falcon and Winter Soldier dealing with losing Steve. And then, Hawkeye with the loss of Nat. Loki's wasn't as much about grief, but it was a lot about... No, I take that back. He was grieving the loss of his mother and just the life he knew. So they have been very much about grief. Hell, the whole Doctor Strange What If episode was about grief. So there's been a lot of, this whole first year of Marvel's Disney Plus series have been about grief. But we get, Yelena is working with another Black Widow named Tanya, I believe. And what they're doing is they're going around and freeing the other widows. They go to this one woman's house named Anna, and they try to free her. But what we learn is that not only has she already been free, but she's basically working as a killer for hire. She's doing a very nice life for herself, has a gorgeous house in the middle of the woods, just doing great. Is upset that they messed up her carpet with that aerosol spray. Now, as they start connecting, they find out what's going on. We find out that they've freed many Black Widows. Yelena gets up and they're giving her grief. Oh, you're going to go live with your sister in New York. And this is all taking place in 2018. This is pre-snap-ish. This is like really pre-snap, because Yelena goes into the bathroom, is basically going to wash her face and, get a moment of air when she gets dusted, but immediately returns. We see it from her point of view as she looks down, sees everything fading, and then suddenly is returned. And then we see the walls and stuff around her change. And my understanding is that it kind of, her mind is processing she's suddenly in a different room, but it's doing it in a very convoluted way because she's still kind of reforming herself. So we see the entire room around her change because it's 5 years later. It's now 2023. She walks out of the bathroom into a different looking house, finds a little girl and a guy playing piano, and then Anna comes in the room and is like, Yelena, you're back. And she tries to catch Yelena up that basically it's been 5 years, and all Yelena cares about is finding her sister, finding Natasha and letting her know that she's okay. Well, at that point, Natasha's dead. And it's such a heartbreaking moment because she is so adamant about finding her sister, but you know what's happened. You know that Natasha has sacrificed herself, and there's a good chance one of the major reasons she sacrificed herself was not only to bring back the other Avengers, but to bring back her sister. And we don't know what happened to Alexei and her mom. I don't remember the name off the top of my head, but yeah. So Natasha had a lot of good reasons for being willing to sacrifice herself to bring back both her Avengers family and her other family. So now we cut to after that scene, and Melina, thank you, Kyle, JD. After that, we follow Kate as she goes back to her, or she goes into her mom's house, and it's another scene of her being patched up, and part of this series is reinforcing what this life is for a normal human who is trying to be a hero, who is trying to make a difference. We're seeing Hawkeye beaten to crap. We're seeing Kate beaten to crap in all these fights and stuff, and they're not Captain America. They don't have super soldier serum or anything else. They're, this stuff hurts. Well, we see her being patched up by her mom. We get to see that Kate's spirit is kind of broken at this point. Clint has sent her away. She tells her mom that because Eleanor is like, "Does this have to do with Clint?" And she's like, "No, Clint protected me and then told me to stay away from him and sent me home." And she's like, "Well, does he think you're a hero?" She goes, "No, and neither do I, or a superhero." So it was a heartbreaking moment. And you see Kate really looks lost. Like this direction she was always going to go with her life is suddenly gone, and she doesn't know what to do with herself. But she does take a moment and explain to Eleanor what they found in their investigation. So she tells her, "Look, we've been looking into Armand's death, and there's a lot of suspicious stuff about Jack, some very incriminating stuff about Jack, and you're going to want to look into it." Well, I have been of the mindset that Jack is more innocent, that it's been Eleanor has been the kind of the bad person here. And here she goes, yeah, I'll look into it. But, I asked flat out when we found out that Jack was the head of Sloan Limited, my question was, does Jack know that he's the head of Sloan Limited? That seemed interesting to me. Well, we're going to find out in this episode. But so Eleanor says she'll look into it, and she tells Kate, "Go get your stuff and then come home." Kate goes back to the apartment, and we see that she, the place is just messed up. But she finds out she's not alone. Yelena is waiting for her and has made mac and cheese. And there's a nice callback to the Black Widow movie where when they're going to have dinner, when they're in Ohio, and Yelena's like, "I want mac and cheese." And Melina is like, "You always want mac and cheese." It's, so it continues on. And they have one of the most interesting discussions. And you see them kind of bonding over this conversation. They're on opposite sides. See, I love mac and cheese, and as a kid, and now I hate it. I never liked mac and cheese, but I'm not a cheese fan. But I have found, and this is really off topic, I have found a recipe that I make for a buffalo chicken mac and cheese that is just fantastic. But it's not normal cheese. I mean, the only cheese in it is cream cheese and then a little bit of pepper jack. There's very little cheese in my buffalo chicken mac and cheese. You might actually like it, JD. Yes, I don't like cheese. I like, as long as it's warm, it's one thing. I can eat a cheeseburger. I prefer a regular hamburger. I can eat pizza, but I don't like cold cheese at all. Lisa has gotten into doing charcuterie boards. That's her new thing. So she is buying tons of cheese and meats and crackers and stuff. She made one for my nephew's birthday. It was a huge hit. She's making one for Christmas. So I've been trying all this stuff. And I also recently bought a fondue pot because Lisa wanted, so we had fondue one night. So I'm getting more into it. But again, it does seem to have to be warm, soft cheese. It can't, just straight out cheddar. Yeah. American cheese. And definitely not cold cheese. Definitely not. It's just like eating wax. Okay, back on topic. So her and Yelena have this conversation where a lot of stuff is put on the table. And we kind of get more into Yelena. And as I got to be honest, I wasn't a huge fan of Yelena in the Black Widow movie. There's this tendency with female characters right now to make them snarky and overconfident. And I mean, they did the same thing with kind of Kate. And then when you push that aside is when I start liking the character. I started liking the character of Kate in the third episode where she helps Hawkeye with the conversation with Nathaniel. And, but when she is that cocky, overconfident version, that's when I'm not a fan of the character. Well, Yelena was the same way in the other movie. She was very overconfident and very not, didn't listen to anybody. But by the end of the movie, I liked her a little bit better. And here, I think she's fantastic. I think Yelena is great in this, and I really love that scene. The whole sit down between Yelena and Kate is something that gives me confidence in where Marvel Universe is going. These are two characters that, as much as I am against moving on, I mean, I want to see more of this. I want to see more of Clint Barton as Hawkeye. I want to see more of Natasha Romanoff as Black Widow. I'm not ready to move on from these characters because you don't do that in the comics. Clint Barton has been Hawkeye since the 60s. Natasha has been Black Widow since the 60s. So I'm not one for when they bring in new characters to replace the old ones. I think you should just keep telling good stories, but neither here nor there. So these two really kind of grew on me in the interaction and how, Yelena is very confident, but you kind of believe her. And I think part of it is that Kate believes how good Yelena is. And I one of my favorite lines, though, is when she says, Clint saved the world. And Yelena's like, no, my sister saved the world. Natasha Romanoff saved the world. That, or the whole thing, she keeps referring to her as Kate Bishop, full name. And Kate finally turned around and said, "Are you just keep saying my full name to make sure I know that you know who I am?" And she's like, "Yes." So there was this underlying threat, but there was also this kind of a friendly thing going on there. Like, I'm in New York. I want to know what to do. Where should I go? So she even referred to it as a girls' night. And when Kate says she does not know where Clint is, she believes her. She absolutely believes her. And of course, we know at that point it's true. Now she could guess. She's either back at the grandma or the aunt's apartment or Grill's or something like that, but she doesn't know for sure. I don't know if Kate would have given the information even if she had, but I thought that was interesting. But yeah, that is a really neat scene. And then we switch over to Clint, and they're playing the music from, I believe, the Charlie Brown Christmas, and he's all alone. And he ends up going to Grill's house of all places. And I got to say, one of my first knocks on the early episodes, was the LARPer scene. It felt like we were just wasting our time. But how much Grill's has become part of this series, I'm good. I'm absolutely good with the LARPer scene. I'm in now. So, because Grill's is like, no, you can't stay at a hotel. You can sleep here, man. You can have my couch. You can have my bed, and he's taking care of the pizza dog. So Grill's a good guy. I like Grill's. And I hope what happens to Grill's in the comics doesn't happen in the series, because in the comics, Kazi ends up killing Grill's. I'm hoping that doesn't happen here. Because again, this is a Christmas story. We don't want to get too dark. But there's a good, we see Hawkeye there, and he is beaten and he is exhausted, and he's just sitting there eating pizza with Grill's and petting the dog and sharing his food with the dog. And again, he is just exhausted. You see him. It's as broken as we've ever seen Clint. And you feel for him. He's hurting, and you hurt for him at that point. And I thought that was an interesting scene. But as things move forward, Kate goes back to the apartment and finds out that Eleanor has been looking into Jack and calls the police on him. And Jack's attitude at that point is one of another favorite thing in the episode. He says, "Are you kidding me? I've never worked a day in my life." And I believe that. And the whole thing about Jack is that, no, darling, do not worry. I would have done the same thing. It's obviously I'm being framed. I will go and clear this up, and I'll be home in time for your party. Great scene. And Kate comes in, she's hugging her mom, and the two cops, one of them is the cop that called for Kate in the first thing in the morning. He doesn't happen to say, by the way, we still need to talk to you about the fire in your place. Can you come see us? But I thought that was an interesting scene. I found the timing was funny, that she got there just in time to see him being arrested, almost like it was, look, Kate, I looked into it for you. Yeah, that's what I was just talking about. It does seem a little staged for Kate's benefit. But I still think that Jack is a patsy in this case. Now, I don't know what Jack's motivation is. I still question that. But I think Eleanor has been using him. It's why she killed, I think she killed Armand. I think she did it with the sword so that if anybody started looking into it, they would go after Jack. I think making him the head of Sloan Limited, again, points everything at Jack. So I think Jack is Kate's scapegoat. Because if they were working together, she wouldn't have left a paper trail for him. So, and definitely wouldn't have called the cops on him. She would have come up with, oh, I looked into Jack and Sloan Limited is this, or she would have come up. I don't think having him arrested was the best solution where, it's going to get Clint off the case. I mean, maybe that's what she thinks it is, but I would be surprised. But it did come across as a little staged. But I've also noticed, as much as I'm enjoying this series, there's a lot of convenience moments. Things that happen that you go, that wouldn't have happened. That timing, the Rolex being just left out in Maya's apartment, and the notepad being next to it. There's a few different moments like that just really feel like the writers just took the easy route. Again, the rest of the show is great, but there are a couple of those convenient moments. So Jack gets arrested, and then we switch to, what Kyle says, we don't really know that he was arrested. Those could be Kingpin's cops. They could be, but we did meet that cop earlier when he called Kate to ask about the fire in her apartment. So that seems a little odd that it's the same cop, like we're going to introduce him over here so you believe it when we show you him later. Also, I don't think this particular show is being as twisty, and I think that's been one of the big things with the Disney Plus shows is we expect them to be much more twisted than we're getting. They're a lot more straightforward most of the time, Oh, this person is, back all the way back with WandaVision with the Tyler, whatever his name is, the head of Sword, oh, he must be working with Mephisto, or he might be Mephisto, or he's working with Agatha Harkness. No, he just turned out to be a jerk. He was just a jerk. There was no extra layers to him. And and that's usually where the speculation goes awry, when we start looking for deeper and deeper levels. Oh, well, Evan Peters' character must be Mephisto, or he must be this, or he must be that. No, he's just a guy named Boner. So perhaps we're trying to get a little too clever. Perhaps sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. But Maya also is still reeling from being shot in the shoulder by an arrow when the big warehouse, or the big fight on the roof thing. So Kazi is patching her up, and he's telling her, look, we got to stop this. Your hunt for Ronan is getting out of hand. You need to back off and just stop. And she's like, no. And he said, fine, I will help you kill Ronan, but it's got to stop there. And I'm starting to think that, we assumed that whoever the higher up was wanted the watch. But maybe it was Maya who wanted the watch because she knew it had ties to Ronan, who she is trying to get to, but, didn't want to go through Kingpin to do this. She needed the watch, and he wouldn't let her have it, or he knew he wouldn't let her have it. So that's why she sent in the tracksuit guys, which seems kind of weird to me, but it's going to be interesting to see how much of this they tie together, because otherwise there's things that don't make sense. Like, if Wilson Fisk is the one who wanted the watch, why didn't he, if Eleanor is working for him, why didn't he just go, no, I'm just going to take the watch? He didn't need to send in the Tracksuit Mafia. He could have just told Eleanor, I want that. He's a big enough, bad enough guy, he could have done that. Unless Eleanor's not working for him, but they're actually rivals. In which case, I could see him doing that. But, again, it just seemed like he could have also gone and just outbid everybody. If you're in a room and you're bidding against the Kingpin, don't you go, nope, he can have it. $1.95 is a perfect price for it. All yours, I'm out. You don't bid against the Kingpin when he wants something. So I'm hoping they've kind of resolved that whole thing, why they were having an auction, and who was running the auction compared to who wants the watch, stuff like that. That's one of the things I'm looking forward to getting answers to in the finale. All right, guys, we are at the halfway point. Let's take a quick break, and we'll come right back with the rest of the recap and speculation on what we'll see in the finale. Be right back.
Hi, I'm Travis, the King of Source Point, and you're watching The Experience.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Dan Wickline Show. We are talking about Hawkeye Episode 5 and the big reveals that happened and everything we learned. So we're going to jump back into it, but let me go ahead and run that spoiler banner again. Why the Witchblade cover, JD? Are Kingpin cops like Keystone cops? No, Kingpin cops are definitely on the take and they do exactly what he wants them to. Keystone cops are just bungling because they're idiots. I don't think Kingpin would hire bumbling idiot cops. He needs cops that he knows can actually do what he needs them to do. All right, so picking up where we left off, Clint has some interesting moments. He goes and visits the memorial plaque to where the Avengers formed. I thought that was interesting because they actually have each member of the team's names written out. Tony Stark, Bruce Banner, Steve Rogers, Thor Odinson, Clint Barton, and Natasha Romanoff. So any chance that Clint had of anonymity, it's on a freaking sign. And then Natasha Romanoff as well. And he takes his hearing aid out and he has a moment of talking to Nat. And you see, again, just the anguish this guy is going through after losing his best friend. This is like going to her grave for him. And he talks to her about how he's sorry for how he's screwing up the second chance she gave him. And he has this whole thing about how she was the best and always had to win, and how he really wished it would have been him. I mean, that's the bottom line, is he would have gladly given his life for the Soul Stone instead of Nat's. I think if a genie popped up and said, I can reverse that, he'd take it like that. So I find that interesting. This is a guy with a wife and kids, and he's still willing to sacrifice himself. So that's a really interesting character point. But He also then apologizes not only for screwing up the second chance she gave him, but for what he's going to do next. And then he flips up his hood, which is very symbolic of the Ronin thing. And, again, this is all about what he did in his grief when he lost his family. So he goes off, and then the next thing we see is him going back to that locker and picking up the Ronin suit and then making a call to his wife, Laura. And this call is a little different than the other ones. Normally, she's giving him information. She's helping him. This one is him basically telling her, for lack of a better phrase, he's telling her goodbye. He's basically letting her know that things are about to get out of hand and that he's going to have to do something big to try to stop it. And there's a chance that it won't work and that her and the kids could be in danger and that he's going to do whatever it takes to stop that. And she was very straightforward. She goes, I trust your judgment. You should trust your judgment. You don't need my permission. Just get it done, and I love you. That's pretty much what she says, and she tries to reason with him a little bit like, well, could it really get that bad? And his thing is, it's only a matter of time before the big guy gets into it. And there is this tension that they both fear the big guy, which I thought was fascinating. We still don't know what her connection to this is, why, because her existence shouldn't be common knowledge. How Maya found out about them, about the wife and the family, is still kind of a head scratcher. But to throw in the fact that, that the Kingpin would want to hurt, because you would think that if they killed Clint, that would be the end of it. But would Fisk really then go after the family after the fact? It seemed like once he got his revenge, he'd be okay. If he didn't kill Clint, then yeah. But I don't know. It sounds like Laura has actual skin in the game here. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. And if the watch actually pertains to her or if it pertains to somebody else. And did Kate get out of Maya's apartment with the watch? And if so, where is it? Did she give it back to Clint? Did she destroy it? Did she lose it? Still questions like that. There's never resolution on any point. There's always this vagueness. And sometimes it just later on we find out, I guess that did resolve. But other times it's just left out there. But basically what Clint does is he sends a message arrow to the tracksuit bros, which is hilarious. The two of them driving around talking about different people in tracksuits, like Tony Soprano, the Royal Tannenbaums, Run DMC, and then they're listening to the Run DMC Christmas song, the same one that they play in Die Hard, so that Die Hard connection there. That's a nice touch. And he basically leaves a message saying, Maya, meet me where you first met Ronan tonight. Come alone. And of course, she doesn't come alone. She shows up with Kazi and the rest of the Tracksuit Mafia. So as Ronan, Clint goes around and takes out everybody else before confronting Maya. Kazi's there with a sniper rifle. The other guys are all there with bats and guns. And he just makes short work of them and then has a fight with Maya, who is a lot better fighter than any of the other people. She's actually going toe-to-toe. But then you got to keep in mind that Clint's not a bad fighter, too. That's what we got to remember from this, is that Clint is damn good. And he gets the upper hand and is holding a sword on her, and he removes his mask to show that it is Clint, which I thought was kind of an interesting thing. He says, I wanted you to see my face. And she's like, what? So I can see it while you kill me? He goes, no. You and I aren't that different. he says, but I wanted you to see my face to know that if you come after me or my family, it'll be the last thing you do. And then he does the whole, you and I aren't that different, which is normally the bad guy saying that. But in this case, it's him. And to Maya, he is the bad guy, which I thought was interesting. And she's like, no, you're a monster. And he's like, no, we're both weapons filled with rage and can be pointed and manipulated. And he tells her, look, I was here that night. So he's basically admitting that he killed her father. But he said, I was there because of an informant that works for your boss. Your boss wanted your father dead. Now, that's something I've been talking about for a while now. I didn't think it would be Clint in the Ronin suit because there needed to be that flip. There needed to be that thing that turns Maya after whoever her boss is, whoever the uncle was. And the odds were it was Wilson Fisk, and that's who it is in the comics that has William killed. So, but I thought it would have been somebody else was in the suit. Maybe it was Jack, maybe it was Bullseye, something like that. But he was using the Ronin character as as a scapegoat. And in a way he did. But instead of having someone else in the Ronin costume, he informed on the Tracksuit Mafia because he wanted them taken out. So now I don't know how much Maya believed of it at first. She ended up attacking, gets the upper hand, gets the sword, and Kate shows up and shoots the sword out of her hand and giving Hawkeye enough time to grab it and get out of there. And as they're escaping, he's back in his civilian clothes, and they get a Uber to leave. And you don't really see the sword and stuff. I know that's all collapsible, but I wonder where he put all that because he's holding his shoulder. So I don't know if he ditched the stuff, he destroyed it, or he hid it, or if he was carrying it, we just didn't see it. Maybe he had a backpack on or something. But he gets out of that, and the message to Maya has been delivered. Well, we see how she reacts to it a few minutes later when Kazi shows up and is all happy that she's alive, and then finds out that Ronin escaped. Now, she doesn't tell him, oh, Ronin is Clint. Ronin and Hawkeye are the same. She doesn't give that information, which I thought was interesting. She also asks Kazi why he wasn't there that night that her father got killed. Because we established in the previous episode, Clint said that he worked for 4 years for William Lopez and now the last couple for Maya. Now, we kind of get the impression that maybe Kazi's the informant, that Kazi is the one that ratted him out, or at least got the nod not to be there. So she's like, well, why weren't you there? And it is very suspicious. So I think Maya's flip is starting to happen. Now, I don't necessarily think we're going to, well, let me get to that after. But they get out of there through the Uber, and Maya takes off. And then we switch over to, they go back to Grill's place, but we follow Yelena, and Yelena is following Eleanor. And one of the things that Kate got through to Yelena on when they were talking at the burned down apartment was if somebody has she found out that somebody had hired Yelena to kill Clint. And she said, Clint isn't perfect, but he's good. And if you've been hired by someone to kill him, then you might want to look into whoever it is that hired you. And that does ring a bell enough to Yelena that she starts looking into it, and we see her tracking Eleanor to a hotel. And Eleanor is suspicious enough that she's looking around for a tail, but Yelena's really good. The Black Widow training thing is not something to be sneezed at. Natasha just wasn't great because of who she is. She also had all that training, and all the other Black Widows do as well. So she is able to follow them and actually gets photos or it looks like a video of her meeting with the big boss. And then what we get is we're back at Grill's place, and the Grills and Clint and Kate are all having breakfast, and they're trying to get Lucky or Pizza Dog to do a dance. And she gets a text, and it says, Kate Bishop, I have found who hired me. And so she uses the full Kate Bishop thing because to make her know that it's Yelena. She says, it's Eleanor Bishop. I thought you needed to know, and then sent a picture. But it looks like a video because there's an arrow on it, so you could click the play. But all we see is the still shot before you play the video. And she is shocked. Kate just looks floored, hands the phone over to Clint, and says, who's this meeting with my mother? Clint looks down and she goes, that's the guy I've been worried about the whole time. That's the Kingpin. And we get our first look at Vincent D'Onofrio as the Kingpin in the Marvel Universe, Marvel Cinematic Universe. So, because Netflix stuff hasn't been said to be canon yet. We've had rumors that Vincent D'Onofrio was showing up here. We've had rumors that Charlie Cox was going to show up in Spider-Man No Way Home. I have not seen Spider-Man No Way Home. I'm not going to say one way or the other if I've heard anything about that. But Kevin Feige has said that when we get Daredevil back in the MCU, whenever that is, it'll be Charlie Cox. Well, now we got confirmation it's Vincent D'Onofrio. And if the little still photo is too blurry for you to go, well, maybe it might also be somebody else. If you look in the closing credits, there's a thing that says Vincent D'Onofrio, and then there's a final image of the shadow of, or the outline of Kingpin over the top of Clint and Kate. So, yeah, it's Vincent D'Onofrio. He's even acknowledged it on Twitter. So the big man is back. How that plays out, what that's going to mean, whether Daredevil comes back, whether how much of what we've seen are the Netflix series canon, that's all up in the air. We don't know. It's possible, it's probable. Will the other characters come back? Will some of them come back? Some of them won't. Will we get Elodie Young and John Bernthal and stuff from the Daredevil series? Will we get Jessica Jones or Luke Cage or Finn Jones or any of those other characters? Don't know. How cool would it be if they decide to stick with Finn Jones, if he popped up in the next Shang-Chi movie? Maybe it's based around an actual martial arts tournament that they're both in, or something like that. You could sprinkle these characters in different ways. Luke Cage becomes an Avenger, as does Jessica Jones. Those would be interesting ones to bring in. This opens the door to a lot of possibilities, but still very few answers. All right. So, what are we going to get next week? We know we're going to get them going to the Christmas party. It's been brought up. We saw a glimpse of the invitation for the party. We've seen it in the footage, them going towards Rockefeller Plaza. We know the big finale takes place on the ice rink at Rockefeller Plaza because Marvel likes to do those big, grandiose finales. There's a mention that the costumes were completed by their LARPer friend, so we'll see them in their costumes, and we know we see a little bit of a Fisk. I still honestly believe that Clint Barton is going to get home for Christmas. That we're going to end on a positive note. And the reason I believe, we could set up a lot of other things, but I believe we will end on the positive note that he feels secure enough to go home to his family because Marvel wants this to be their Christmas thing. Marvel wants everybody to watch this again and again at Christmas time. This is the Christmas adventure from Marvel. So I can't see them going for a sad, upsetting ending. Eleanor being arrested? Or Kate finding out her mom's a crook? That's possible. But Kate and Lucky the pizza dog going home with Clint for Christmas, I think is the ending we're going to end up with. Maybe Yelena goes home with them. That would be interesting. The three of them. I don't think Maya will come, but I think Maya will be set up. Maya's revenge against Wilson Fisk will be set up to be taken care of in the Echo series. But I think we'll have at least enough resolution that something about Ronin will be done. Maybe Maya ends up wearing the Ronin suit at the end. Because in the comics, it's Maya who wears the Ronin suit in the first place, and then Clint gets it from her. So that's a possibility. All right, with the last few minutes here, we're going to take a look at my speculation from 2 weeks ago, see where we're at. The first one I said is that the uncle figure would be played by Wilson Fisk, a.k.a. the Kingpin, Vincent D'Onofrio. Ding, got one. Got one. Number 2, I said Jack Duquesne is a S.H.I.E.L.D. agent that knows Clint. I'd say that pretty much this one's been debunked. Might still be a chance. Maybe the Rolex was his and he's undercover and Clint's trying to cover for him. But I think there's like a 2% chance that's still the case. 98% chance this one is dead in the water. Jack Duquesne is the one who killed Maya's father. Completely out the window. Maybe Bullseye was in the Ronin costume. Another one. It was definitely Clint. Eleanor Bishop is evil. Ding, ding, ding. And possibly even Madame Mask. That's still a possibility, but we'll have to wait to see the reveal. But, all right. But Eleanor Bishop is definitely evil. So that's 2 good and 3 bad so far of 5. So the first 5, I got 2 out of 5, which is not great. But now this one's interesting. I said Yelena would reveal that Clint was Ronin and cause a rift between he and Kate. No. Clint revealed that he was Ronin. And there was a rift between Clint and Kate because of Yelena. But it wasn't exactly what I called. You know, I knew that the Yelena's presence would cause a problem. I thought it would be the reveal. But it's just the fact that as a Black Widow assassin has been sent in, Clint pushes Kate away. But I knew there would be a rift between the two that needed it. It was part of the normal storytelling cycle. So this is kind of a gray one for me. I won't call it a win, but I think I'm not going to call it a loss either, because it's about half and half. It wasn't, the reason for the rift wasn't necessarily Yelena was the one that revealed it, but Yelena was the cause of the rift. So let you guys decide if I get a win or a loss on that one. Kate will end up spending Christmas with the Bartons. Still a possibility. Clint will continue in the MCU as a mentor for the Young Avengers. Still possible. The Watch will end up being Stark Tech and lead to Armor Wars. Yeah, I'm going to go ahead and take a loss on that one. No, not a good call there. I think I got that one wrong. We don't know what the Watch is yet, but we will see. And then the last one was more, the last one wasn't really, that was more reading on why Ant-Man's in Rogers the Musical is a nod to the fact that he was one of the original Avengers. Also, no one said this one way or the other, so it's still vague. But I think when Ant-Man went back in time, somebody may have seen him in costume there. And then the rest of the time, you would just assume he's there, shrunk down. So, but his name's not on the plaque, so nobody thinks he was there. So let me go ahead and just take a loss on that one. So right now I got 2 rights, a few still open, and a lot wrong. But that's the fun of doing speculation, right? Yeah. We go into next week with the big unopened questions of how will they resolve this? How will Clint get home to his family and get away from the Kingpin? Is Eleanor Madame Mask, or is she just, what level of evil is Eleanor? And, where will she end up? What is Jack? Is he just merely a patsy and exactly what we see? Or is there something darker to him? What will get Yelena to not kill Clint? And I mean, and how much of Maya is going to turn? Will Maya go after Kazi? Will Kazi become the clown? So there's a lot of interesting unanswered questions, but I think they did a really good job in this, in that they've streamlined it. We speculated a lot of things like, oh, they know each other, from this, or, oh, Laura could be Mockingbird, all that. Oh, yeah, what Laura's connection to the watch is, or what the watch is, that's going to be important too. But the main thing they got to do is, how are they going to get Clint home to his family and put this behind him? Close the door on Ronan. That's going to be the number one thing they got to resolve. They don't necessarily have to resolve the future of Clint and Kate. They could deal with that in another thing. What Echo's or Maya's going to do, that could be taken care of in the Echo series. Is Eleanor Madame Mask or not? Yeah, it'd be nice to know, but just that she's mixed up in this. They don't have to bring her in as another character. Maybe they do in the future. Maybe she gets disfigured a little and then ends up using the mask after that. A lot of things they could do, but there's only a handful of things now they have to do. And the more streamlined it seemed to be, the better likelihood it is. There was a lot more complicated things they could have done, and they've chosen to go with the streamlined. And that's how it's been on all the Disney Plus series, so I don't think it's going to change. I cannot wait to see the finale. We're still figuring out when the finale discussion is going to be, with the holiday coming up. Likely next week on Tuesday, I will do a Spider-Man spoiler review conversation, because I'm going to try to get over and see Spider-Man this weekend or Monday. On Tuesday or on Wednesday, I thought about doing the Hawkeye show then, but it would have just aired. And I think that's too soon. So that will probably be like a year-end type of thing where we talk about all the best shows. Thursday, I have stuff I have to do, prepared for the holidays. I actually will be baking. So there's a good chance we're going to run a Pop Go the Writers in its place. And then that would mean the following Tuesday would be the first chance to talk about the season finale. So that looks like that'll be the schedule, but I'll let you guys know for sure next week. Otherwise, have a great weekend. Stick around for, it's Thursday, so something. We got something up. I know there's kicking it with Henri tonight. What's in the box is next. That's right. What's in the box with Miss Jen? You definitely want to stick around for that. That's where she brings a random box in from the warehouse, opens it up, and offers it up to sell. So you don't know what they're going to get. Half the fun is just seeing what it pops up. It could be just about anything. So stick around for that. That's coming up right after this. Kyle, JD, thanks for running the board. 62 Lefty, good seeing you. Everybody else, thanks for coming on. Please hit the like and subscribe buttons. I'll see you next week. Have a good night.